What's good, my ghouls and goblins? Welcome in. Sit down, get comfortable. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Reely Scared, your weekly horror movie podcast. Just me sitting full screen for the time being. We don't have Connor Breedlove, the top goblin. He is and parts unknown, working a late shift. We'll see if he can join us later this evening. But in the meantime, we're going to keep this ship afloat on this deep rising episode. I'm very excited for this one. Hope you guys are good. Hope you had a happy Halloween. The spooky season has passed for many people, but not for us, not for on this show, not on this channel. We keep it spooky every Thursday night. What's going on, Joseph, in the chat? Thank you for watching. Great to see you. We got a great one for you tonight. Welcoming back a friend of the show. Very excited to have him back on. And excited to talk about a movie I've not seen before. We just wrapped up our Reeloween discussion series where we were talking a lot of Michael Myers week to week to week. So I think it's going to be nice to talk about something different and something that I hadn't seen a couple times previous in my life. We got something new tonight. So very excited for that. You know him well, our special guest tonight. Of course. Oh, you don't know him though. He just dropped out of backstage. He's coming in a little late too. He just dropped out of backstage. So when he pops back in, we'll bring him on the show. There he is. He's returned. Perfect. Let's bring him in here. You guys know him well, of course. He's been on the show before. You may know him from the movie Trivia Schmodown. Just launched a new movie podcast along with Jacob Blunden and our mutual friend Taylor Robinson. Film Review Weekly. Let's get him in here. JTE. What's going on, buddy?
Cue the music from Drive.
Yeah, dude.
I'm Ryan Gosling, baby.
We've got our first mobile guest, JTE on the street. What's going on out there in sunny LA, my friend?
Good. Listen, I got stuck in some traffic, and I was like, I'm not going to miss the beginning. I'm going to call from my phone. As Bane said in The Dark Knight Rises, we're going mobile. I really hope I don't get in an accident. And I also
that'd be
hope
awful.
I kind of do, because it would just be like a really good found footage horror movie. Or I'd be like, oh shit! And all of a sudden, you just see like the camera's upside down, kind of like how the Batman trailer ends.
Yeah, that'd be our first viral episode with our luck. That would be the highest ranking episode where JT flies off the road.
I will say this: I'll be home in like 5 to 10 minutes. I'm going to jump on my computer, but I'm thinking about it. My picture quality might be better on here because I have the new iPhone 13 Pro.
Yeah,
this camera is amazing. It looks so clear. I think my webcam laptop can't compete.
I gotta say, it does look really clear. Like you're coming in pretty strong. I'm surprising because like StreamYard usually shits the bed on a phone at all times, but you are on the road, you're on the move, and you're keeping up well. So I appreciate you coming in and hanging out however you can.
Hey, the iPhone 13 Pro, like it's crazy. I have a camera in my house that I paid a lot of money for. And this camera could basically compete with it. It's insane how good the camera is on this. So if I look amazing, it's all the camera.
You do look amazing. You look great, my friend. Good to have you back on. What's good in your life, dude? You just started a new movie podcast.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. I got to start plugging it. I used to have a podcast called JTE Movie Thinks, and I would bring on somebody, and we would just talk about the last movie they watched. So it wasn't really like up to date, like current films, because I was on the Schmoes No Show. I was in Screen Junkies. We had plenty of reviews. I didn't want to really like get into that because I was already on shows where we talked about that stuff. But it's the future now, man. Screen Junkies isn't around as much as it used to be. I'm no longer working for them. Schmoes No, they're doing their own thing, the big thing actually. So it's like on my YouTube channel, I used to do reviews for all the big movies that came out, but I don't know, man. Like, I'm kind of stepping away from the, my YouTube videos were 6-7 minutes long. Then sometimes I would do a spoiler review and it would be like 20 to 30. But most of the time it was just me by myself talking to the camera. I just really wanted to get back to having, long conversations about movies and really kind of get into it. I feel like with a YouTube review, it's just real quick. It's kind of fast. Mm-hmm. You don't really get to into the meat and potatoes of the film.
Right.
So I figured, let's go back to podcast. I don't really want to go into YouTube because you have to worry about camera setup, lighting. You have to have an area to shoot. For podcast, you just need a microphone and a computer, and that's really it. And I don't know. I drive a lot in LA. I get stuck in traffic like I am right now. and I'm always listening to movie podcasts, and I feel like there's not enough, or I just feel like there could be more. I mean, trust me, there's enough, but I feel like, I've done podcasts before, and I missed it. I honestly missed it, and I miss talking about movies. And have that outlet to really talk about movies, because I'm not on any shows right now. And Movie Trivia Schmodown, that's all competition, man. We're not on there talking, movie reviews. So this is a way for me to get my opinion out there. And Taylor and Jacob they're awesome on the microphone. Like, they're really well thought out in all their opinions. So our first episode just dropped, and it's just kind of like an introduction episode. We do kind of do a mini review for, what's it called? Last Night in Soho, which I don't even know if I consider that a horror movie. I don't know about you, but it didn't really feel like a horror movie to me. I had horror elements, but yeah, so that's it. So yeah, you can find it on Spotify, iTunes. It's called Film Review Weekly. I went with the most simple title possible. So when you search on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, it comes up pretty easily. Film Review. There you go.
Right. It sounds very official, very formal. So
thank you.
It's a reliable source. I actually did see Last Night in Soho this past weekend. I agree. I think maybe it was promoted as a little more of a horror film than it actually is. It definitely felt more like a, kind of a supernatural thriller. If you had to put a label on it. I obviously, you don't want to get too deep into it because that's what you do on your show. Did you like it, and it's been very divisive?
The first half. I really liked the first half. And I kind of felt like it fell apart on the second half. But I really enjoyed the first half. Like Jacob London said, it's his favorite movie of the year. So he loved it. And Taylor really liked it. So it was a great episode because I kind of got to give my grievances, and they told me why they loved it so much, which is great. You don't always want to agree all the time. Movies are very subjective. Now, I can't wait to hear your review of this movie, which you've never seen.
Yeah, I've never seen.
I did some research. This movie came out a week after Titanic.
What a terrible week, released a cruise ship thriller.
I know, it's like they saw Titanic was coming out, so they were like, oh, well, we'll kind of piggyback on that movie. They didn't know it was going to be the most profitable movie at that time ever. Only to be outdone by Avatar. And then
and I think I'd read that they were moving it around a lot that year too, because it kept coming up against other action movies, other horror movies, and they didn't want to compete against themselves. So yeah, they're like, let's stick it. I mean, I could see their logic, oh, that's good counter programming, Sea Monster versus your historical drama romance film. But yeah, that was death to release anything in that same week. Yeah, I'd never seen this movie before, and I know you've been waiting to talk about this one because since we last had you on, I've actually had the pleasure of meeting you in person, and I think one of the very first things you said, the very first thing you said was you missed a Rocky question. You're dead to me. But I think about the second thing you said was, when am I coming on to talk Deep Rising? So this one's been in your head for a little while, I think.
Yeah, well, I really enjoyed doing Demon Knight. And that's another movie I feel like doesn't get brought up much. Although Mike Flanagan, just a couple weeks ago, tweeted about his love for Demon Knight and how he wished more people would bring it up. And I was like, well, if I ever meet Mike Flanagan, I'll be like, not only did I bring it up, I brought it to a horror podcast. So me and Mike Flanagan have very similar tastes. We're both very good at what we do. But this movie is just so much fun. And I saw that, I can't remember if I saw it in theaters. I'm pretty sure I did. If I didn't see it in theaters, I definitely rented a Blockbuster. But I just remember watching this movie and have so much fun with it. And it's one of those movies where I go back and I'm like, is it still as fun as it was back then? And for me, it's a resounding yes. The movie knows exactly what it is from the get-go. It wastes no time with backstory. It just begins. And it's kind of like a crazy ride. And I tweeted this out today. I think this is Stephen Sommers' second best film. I think The Mummy with Brendan Fraser is awesome. Right. It's the closest thing we've gotten to Indiana Jones type movie. And I think this is probably his second most enjoyable film. Some people out there like G.I. Joe Rise of Cobra. Some people might like The Mummy Returns or Van Helsing. But give me Deep Rising.
Yeah, I not only had I not seen it, I'm not even sure how confident I am that I'd even really truly heard of it. Maybe in passing, but when you said it, I couldn't even really think that I knew what that was at a brief mention. It didn't come to mind. I couldn't tell you who was in it or that it was a Stephen Sommers movie. So I went in pretty blind to this. I knew it was a sea monster movie. I mean, the title kind of conjures that up all on its own, which is already totally appealing to me because I am in on sea monsters. I love that shit. I've said it before on this show. I think like the deep ocean is such an underutilized setting for like horror movies and stories.
Oh, it's horrifying. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so inherently scary, and you don't even have to bring a sci-fi concept to it for it to get that way. It's like we actually have this deep layer of the earth that we aren't exploring and we understand so little about. That's so ripe for horror. Not that this movie takes place at the bottom of the ocean. The deep rises in this. It comes up to a cruise ship, but I was already in 100% just on the concept of it. And yeah, I would say this thing reminded me so much of like it's like you said, it's like a simple premise, gets to the point pretty quick. Although it definitely is longer than I would expect a movie like this to be. Like it gets to really play around with the concept for quite some time. It's like a good hour 45 or something like that. This movie reminded me though of like the best adaptation of a video game that doesn't exist. Do you know what I mean? Like it totally is structured like an old like PlayStation 1 like Resident Evil game. You show up on a cruise ship, no one's there, you got a bunch of guns, there's monsters. Like
oh my god, now I want a Deep Rising video game.
Right? It totally feels to me like in a weird way like the best Resident Evil movie. It's like such a good adaptation of even though there is no Deep Rising game. But like every set piece, the characters, everything about it reminded me of the setup of a video game, which I'm into because I love those old horror video games naturally. And yeah, I thought the movie was a lot of fun. Great setup and premise. First of all, I love just the opening of the scary monster, first person perspective going through the ocean. Love that. And you get like a total colonial Marines thing with like the pirate guys.
Yes.
Great cast.
I'm glad you said that because they have maybe the coolest guns since Aliens.
Yes.
Those they're like mini guns. They're like machine gun sized mini guns with a little rotating. I'm like, why does not? If I'm an action director, I'm using this gun in every movie going forward. Like they look so awesome, and I totally thought of Aliens. I said to myself, you know, the machine guns in Aliens are some of the coolest machine guns ever.
Right.
And I'm like, this is probably the second best.
Yeah, it's definitely an element that like it's definitely something I noticed. I was like, guns don't look like that, and this is a super loud movie. Like, just guns are going off half the runtime on this thing. There's so much just careless blasting all throughout the movie. So fucking loud. Great cast on this.
Great. A lot of character actors. You know, there's not really an A-list star here. I feel I'm watching this movie and I'm like, Trent Williams. It's almost like Nathan Fillion watched this movie and said, "That's just who I'm going to be." Every movie and show going forward. I was like, Nathan Fillion would totally play this role nowadays or 10 years ago. He's just a wisecracking, guy it was just amazed me how much it reminded me of Nathan Fillion and like Firefly and Serenity and all those things. And then I think his name's Kevin O'Connor, the guy who's also in The Mummy. He's in Van Helsing. He's like Stephen Summers' like go-to actor. He's so good in this movie. In such a small role, you really kind of fall in love with his character. He's kind of like the audience surrogate. He's the one going, "What the hell's going on?" Like you would do what he does in this movie, and I just think he's fantastic in this. Famke Jensen, awesome. This is right off Goldeneye. She's awesome in this. All the mercenaries, some great actors in there, like some great character actors. There's not really a weak pick in the bunch, honestly.
You got Jamin Hanzo, who's like,
yes,
that guy's just everywhere. You will find him in any movie. It seems like he's just waiting there for you. Did you by chance read who they originally had tapped to be the Treat Williams character?
I might have. Who did they say?
Harrison fucking Ford.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, and because he didn't do it, they cut the budget by a huge amount.
Yeah, that's an entirely different movie, right? If you got a movie star of that acclaim and caliber in the middle of this thing, like that would have taken over the entire project.
All right, I'm home. I'm gonna run upstairs.
Should I drop you out and bring you back in a second?
Entertain him for about a minute. I'll be right back.
All right. Here we go. Okay, I'm gonna entertain you. Just you and me, ghouls and goblins. Here we are. JTE. He was on the run. He was on the move. Now he's coming home. We don't want to dox him, so we're taking him out of the feed. When he comes back in, he'll be secure. I did have a blast with this movie, Deep Rising. If you didn't see it, I would recommend checking it out. You can get it for like $3 on VOD or whatever. Not streaming anywhere anymore. But I fucking love sea monsters. If you've been listening to this show for long enough, you know I love sea monsters. I love the deep ocean. I think maybe it was like initially a Cthulhu thing for me. I don't know. Cthulhu's kind of overplayed these days, but like, I am so intrigued by the deep ocean and what's down there. I'm all about that bloop. You guys heard the bloop? Be sure to Google the bloop if you haven't heard it before. And I'm excited to talk about Deep Rising a little more. It's a fun movie. It's a fun, I would say, underseen gem, at least by me. I never saw it. I never even heard of it until JTE brought it to my attention. Of course, I never say this podcast stuff anymore, so this feels like a great place to say it. Of course, if you want to support the show on the channel, we got the Streamlabs along the bottom. Feel free to shoot us a couple coins if you can afford it. If not, no sweat, no bother, and you don't need to for us to pull up your message in the chat. Of course, we'll always say what's up to you, no problem. Matt Thomas hanging out. I love creepy monsters. Well, that's true. I do love creepy monsters. It's pretty on brand for them, but I love the deep sea. You know what I don't love, though? Cruise ships. Seems like the worst thing ever. Terrible things happen on a cruise ship in this movie. I've never been on a cruise. I don't think I ever want to be on a cruise. Seems like the worst time ever. I'm going to ask JT if he's been on a cruise. JT, have you ever been on a cruise ship?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I've never been on a cruise ship. It's something I always wanted to do. Just never had the money or the time, really. I don't know. I've heard like good stuff and bad things. I've heard some people love it, some people don't. I have friends that go yearly, like it's a tradition with their family. But I would definitely like to go on one sometime. I just don't want to do it like a cheap way. Like if I'm going to go on a cruise, let's spend a little money and go on a good cruise.
It seems like a potential nightmare, right? Like I just always think of that one. And like a couple of years ago, a cruise ship broke down and people were just like wading through their own like shit and piss for days, like waiting to be rescued. Do you remember that at all? Is that right?
Yeah. I remember that. It was horrible.
Yeah, that seems like you can remove the monsters out of it. It just seems like such a recipe for disaster. I don't know. I like the ocean and I'm always down for a vacation. I don't know if I could do a cruise ship though. Maybe. I don't know. You get a bunch of free booze and buffets and
why not?
Just don't fall off the edge or whatever.
The free food thing was like the biggest thing for me. Like, what? I could eat whatever I want when I want. Let's do it.
Yeah. JT, I was also talking about sea monsters while you were gone. Mm-hmm. Has that ever been a point of interest for you? Is that like a subgenre of sci-fi and horror that intrigues you at all?
I mean, it does intrigue me. There's probably, like you said, there's not a lot of them. I think The Abyss, James Cameron's The Abyss, is a movie I really enjoy, and I love just like that, the unknown. It's like you have space, which is unknown. Our ocean is like an Earth level space. Like the deeper you go, who knows what's down there? There's places where humans can't go, where things are probably living.
Right.
It's kind of crazy to think of. I remember as a kid, I really was interested in like Loch Ness Monster, like that whole thing. Like I kind of was like, oh, what's Loch Ness? But then, you get older and you're like, oh, yeah, it's probably not possible.
Yeah, I had I've told this before in high school. I had a speech class, and one of our assignments was to tell a persuasive speech. And I said, I'm going to convince people the Loch Ness Monster is real. And then in doing my research on the Loch Ness Monster, I convinced myself it wasn't real. It was such a heartbreaking moment. I was like, oh, there's no way it's real. If I do any critical research, he's definitely not out there. There's no way. Which is a shame because I definitely I think you nailed it. That might be the initial fascination for me is Loch Ness Monster. That's a good call. Mm-hmm. I was also super fascinated with something called the bloop for a while. You ever heard of this before?
No, the bloop.
And I think I've told this before on here too. I'm always talking about the bloop. The late 90s. There was like these sonar devices. I think they were like retrofitted from like Cold War era sonar device, like microphones or something like that, but they got retrofitted for like a marine biology organization in the late 90s. They pick up this sound they refer to as the bloop, but it came from like way deep in the ocean. Again, like pressure levels way too intense for us to ever visit. And the prevailing theory for years was because of, obviously I'm paraphrasing, but from some of the qualities of the sound, they were able to say, oh, this had to have come from some sort of organic being.
Mhm.
Are you listening to the bloop right now?
No, I don't know what.
I thought I heard the bloop.
That was the traffic.
They said it had to come from an animal, but in order for it to have reached these devices and for them to have recorded it in such an intensity, it would have had to have been like 4 times larger than a blue whale, which is, the largest known organism on the planet. So that just makes my imagination run wild. And then some like Killjoy a couple years ago was like, oh, I think it was like shifting tectonic plates or something. So like, no, fuck that. We don't subscribe to that theory. It had to be a giant. It was a Cloverfield monster.
It's like the movie The Meg, right? There was an earthquake and
Yeah.
it let loose a super shark. So
exactly.
that's all it was.
Yeah, it's right. Maybe both are true. Yeah, it's the Meg. Yeah, no, I love sea monsters, so this played to me. What do you think about the monster design in this?
Yeah, it's definitely 90s CG. But
not that bad, though.
No, not that bad. I think, it's late 90s CG. For me, the movie's so tongue-in-cheek and, kind of ridiculous. It just kind of adds to the charm a little bit. It feels like really good special effects, and it didn't look CG at all. That'd be great, but it almost just kind of fits the vibe this movie's going for. This feels like a B-movie horror film that you would watch in a theater full of people and have a lot of fun with. And I really like the practical effects that are in this. It kind of remind me, I won't say The Thing, which is like the granddaddy of practical effects movies, but like the bodies that have been like slowly digested. They look like the gremlins who melted into gremlins. I just really like the set design and production design of the dead bodies. The gore in this is a great mix of practical and CG. There's the one guy who gets spit up who's half digested.
Yeah.
And you can tell it's CG, but like it's not bad. And they do a good job of mixing the slime and the blood, and you can see through his hand. I think it's a good mix, and it adds to the overall fun and kind of B-movie vibe that the film has going for it.
I agree that's probably one of the best parts of the movie is when you see this guy get eaten and they shoot the monster to shit and he falls back out. And he's still sort of alive as his body's disintegrating. That was a great kill scene. And I agree that there's a good balance, especially for what was this, 1998? There's a good balance, and not a special dependency on CG, because that you couldn't depend on CG that much in 1998, especially not on not a shoestring budget for this, but relative to what they were making, a sort of a mid budget. The only time the CG really breaks, I think, is towards the end when you get the full monster reveal, and that starts. Yeah. Like I said, PS1, right?
Yeah. It's maybe PS2. I won't give it PS1.
Yeah, but when it's just the tentacles like going through the hallways and busting down the doors, and even when they get kind of a face hugger quality to them, these mouths that open up and stuff. I think all that stuff. I was prepared for it to have aged very poorly in that respect, but I was surprised. It actually looked pretty damn good. It held up pretty well.
Yeah, again, he did a good job of using practical, like just the way the metal bends in this. Like there's one scene where they're in a hallway and the walls with the metal are just like almost like vines going through the metal. And I was like, oh man, that's so cool. Cool way to build up the tension without actually seeing the monster, but knowing that there's a presence there that's going to destroy you. I think he did a really good job. This movie is like a roller coaster ride. It's just a thrill ride of gore, violence, and like comedy. Like it has a really good sense of humor underneath it also. So for me, it's a very entertaining movie. I could easily sit down with some popcorn and just have a good time watching this film.
That's a great point. Not only do I wish I could play the Deep Rising video game, but I wish I could go on like the Universal Studios Deep Rising ride.
Oh my God, it'd be amazing.
Blasting water in your face and stuff like Jurassic Park. That'd be awesome. Speaking of great kills too, the guy falling out. The very first kill in this, I think it's the very first kill. Legendary, because like the boat starts rocking and everybody's losing their minds and running through the halls and trampling over each other, and we just stay with this one woman who decides to hide in the bathroom. And like for some reason I had an inkling where it was going to go, but I talked myself out of it. I was like, that's not what's going to happen. But no, sure enough, I yelled, she gets sucked down the toilet.
Yeah, and what's funny is like if you saw the teaser trailer for this movie, I'm older. I remember seeing it in theaters. was just the opening of that opening scene. It was like a bunch of jump cuts, and that whole scene with her in the bathroom was basically the teaser trailer. And you're just watching the trailer, you're thinking, what's happening? Like, what is killing this woman? Like, what's happening on this boat? And I thought it was a really effective teaser trailer. So every time I see that scene at the beginning of the movie, I immediately think of the teaser trailer.
It's beautiful because I think it says that it totally communicates the tone before the movie really gets started. It's like, nope, we are opening up with a woman getting sucked down a toilet by a unseen monster. Like that is the tone that we are trying to accomplish. And like slam to opening titles. That is the message we want to send. And I think that being said, though, I think the movie was like surprisingly patient as well with revealing the monster. Like it takes a pretty long, you can like see people getting dragged away and killed and stuff, but it really takes, I would say probably almost even a half hour or so before you really start seeing that monster, which I think was probably also to their benefit. You know, I mean, it's always,
it's a Jaws technique.
Exactly. Yeah. It's good to kind of hold back until you can't anymore. And I think it's pretty effective here. Especially again towards the end where you don't see the full monster until the very end, which I think is probably also to its benefit to keep that money shot for the finale there. And I love the setup too when they get to that, because I expected a lot of people to be in the movie. I thought when they got there, it's the cruise ship, you know, it was going to be pandemonium. But by the time like the main character, and I don't even know what you would call them, pirates, these guys with the guns,
mercenaries, they're mercenaries basically.
Yeah, mercenaries who've kind of like stolen their ship, and you know they have their own motive going to this cruise ship. When they get to that cruise ship, there's literally almost everyone has been killed.
Yeah, which is great. It kind of reminded me of like those movies like Ghost Ship, where they just, you know, it's something eerie about a giant ship like that in the middle of the sea, empty. Like it shouldn't be empty, and that kind of builds up the dread and like, you know, the mystery. Like the guy's saying like, where is everybody? Like this is weird, and you know, us knowing something happened, but when you first see the movie, you don't know what happened. And I just think it kind of adds to the whole mystery and thriller part of it all. And it's cool to see these guys be like responding in the right way. Like, what the F is going on here? Like, what is happening? And they start to freak out. They don't all keep their composure. Some of the mercenaries start freaking out, man. And, you know, this team, these guys with the boat are also kind of like, what have we got ourselves into?
Right. No, and that's, again, it keeps reminding me of like an old horror game, because it's like that would be the setup, right? We're going to the ship. You come in, you got to wander around the ship for a few levels. There's nobody there. You know, you're trying to piece it all together. And then you get copious shots, as in this movie, of just like piles of bloody skeletons, which I think
is so awesome. Many, like goo all over them, human goo.
Yeah, the goo. Towards the end, you get like that crazy wide shot because not only is everybody dead, but there's not really even a trace of anybody left by the time they get there, which makes it even more bizarre. And then you find like the skeleton stockpile graveyard in like the lobby of the ship, where it's just piles of these. They're not even dead bodies, skeletons. They've just eaten all their skin and everything off.
Yeah.
Amazing fucking like Sam Raimi-esque visual. These bloody skeletons just piled on top of each other. I love it. Yeah, and I agree. So much of what's fun about it is all the bickering between the primary characters.
Yeah.
We're just in panic mode the entire time. And yeah, you mentioned Famke. I never can say this woman's name. Famke Jensen?
I believe, I think that's right. I mean, look who you're asking here. I'm pretty sure it's I'm pretty sure it's Famke Jensen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jean Grey herself.
Right. This is pre X-Men for her, right? This is like what, 2 years pre X-Men.
Yeah.
And
after GoldenEye.
Yeah, after GoldenEye, which I'd read that they almost didn't cast her because I thought she was too notable after GoldenEye, which is a weird problem to have.
Yeah, I don't know how that's a problem.
Especially when you were looking for Harrison Ford in your leading role.
Yeah.
I'd also read they had Claire Forlani was playing that character for like a few days.
Yep.
and had a bunch of problems, I think, with Stephen Sommers, or creative differences is what they
Sounds like you checked
chalked it up to.
IMDb trivia, just like me.
Yes, I think we did this on Demon Night too, where we were
Yeah.
just like, "Did you read this?" Yes, I
Yeah.
did.
I've been doing that
Yeah.
for like years. Like whenever I watch a movie, I usually will pop on IMDb trivia, especially if it's something I've seen before, and
Yeah.
just kind of get some more information behind the scenes.
Yeah, it's when you do the Really Scared podcast, we do our research by reading the IMDb trivia. Now, there was something I did read that wasn't in the IMDb trivia, which I thought was really fascinating. Maybe you read this too. I got this on the Wikipedia article.
No, go ahead. Let's hear it.
Did you know what this movie was initially setting up franchise wise?
It was supposed to be a King Kong, right?
Yeah.
So at the very end, they're at an island. You see a volcano and you see something moving in the woods. And Stephen Sommers was trying to get his hands on a King Kong remake or new King Kong movie. And I think the ending was supposed to be like, oh, it's in the King Kong universe, but this is just a little hint. But apparently the rights got thrown around and got put on the back burner until Peter Jackson himself came in and said, I'll do it. It's been my dream project. I don't know how a Stephen Sommers King Kong movie would be. I don't know what that looks like, but it's something.
I would go see it. If you just tell me that on premise alone, I'd be like, all right, I'd like to see it. I didn't perceive the ending as King Kong when it happened. I just thought, oh, there's a tentacle monster on land too, I guess.
Totally.
But yeah, there's even like a credit, I guess, at the end, like so and so as Kong, like the guy who did the voice. Yeah,
nice.
They were so gung ho about getting the next one was going to be Kong Rising, and that was the implication that they were
the movie bombed, and the movie bombed. That basically put a stop to all that.
Yeah, but you know what? Kind of ahead of his time in that way, where everything now is so much about playing the long game and the setup and building the universe out, like making
not
one
since
movie.
Freddy Krueger reached out and grabbed the hockey mask. Has there been like a tease?
Right.
That one was a little more straightforward.
Yeah, that shit blew everybody's mind. But I thought that was an interesting detail for sure. Just that they had that vision. But obviously he goes on to do The Mummy instead, which I think was probably more his beat and also just a great movie and a great series. Yeah.
To me, I loved the second one growing up, but then I rewatched Returns and just didn't really hold up for me. But the first one is awesome.
In fairness, yeah, I've not watched watched the second one in a long time.
The third one, not good.
And again, I don't think I've actually. That's the one with Jet Li, right?
Yeah, Rob Cohen directed it right after Fast and Furious.
Oh yeah. I don't think I've actually ever seen the Dragon Emperor one or whichever. Yeah, and we all love the Dwayne Johnson Scorpion CG though at the end of the second Mummy.
That's just PS1. That's PlayStation 1 graphics.
Yeah, that looks worse than anything in this. That's a great point, actually.
Great point. I remember being in theaters and being like, "What am I looking at? This is unbelievably bad."
Yeah.
When The Rock came out, I would rather him just come out as like a human. At least it would have been The Rock, damn it, instead of this stupid monster.
Yeah, they thought they were on the cutting edge at the time.
Yeah, they were not.
But yeah, Famke Jensen, killing it as sort of the femme fatale. I guess she was. I'm sure you read this too. She was upset because she thought she looked too sexy the whole movie. And Stephen Sommers said, "Well, that's if you're going to be the romantic interest, you always have to look sexy." Which I put two and two together. I imagine the Claire Forlani said, "Well, fuck this. I'm done. I'm not dealing with that."
And she's dealing with water, and I mean, they actually have some good water effects. Like they're using real water. There's one point where it just floods the hall, and I'm like, "That's impressive. That's like Titanic level water right there." Like they really didn't hold back on some of the practical effects, which I appreciate.
Yeah, don't they always say like the worst thing you can do is shoot in water? It's a terrible time for everybody. I mean, you mentioned like The Abyss. That's like one of the famous, like everybody just had an awful time. Ed Harris was like almost died or whatever.
Let's not forget Waterworld.
Waterworld, that's true.
It was a walking disaster, basically one of the most trolled productions ever because they decided if you're going to make a movie called Waterworld, you're shooting the whole thing on water.
Yeah. You just imagine how fucking cold it is and got all that you've got all that equipment you have to keep safe. But
So let me ask you this: what are your overall feelings on this movie? Did you like it? Did you love it? Were you just like it was okay? Like I'm just curious what your overall reaction is.
Yeah, no, I would definitely say I like it.
Mhm.
I think it's a lot of fun, and I think that's all it's really striving to be. Is
Yeah.
fun. I would say it was a little. I felt like it was a little long in parts.
Hmm.
I feel like there's a couple redundant scenes with the back and forth between the Marines or not Marines, but the mercenaries.
Yeah,
You
and
know
then the
how
captain, the guy, the rich squirmy guy.
that's
Um,
right.
yeah, that
Yeah,
whole
and then
thing.
with Jansen's character, like we would go long stretch. There was a while where I kind of forgot she was in the movie because like you set her up at the very beginning,
Hmm.
and all the cruise ship stuff happens. They get on board, and you go this really long stretch too, where you don't see her for a long time, and then she like pops out of the elevator or whatever it is, and they
Hmm.
find her later. And I was like, oh shit, yeah, I forgot she's in the movie. That's a character in this. So there was long stretches where I was like, we could maybe have trimmed this down a little bit, but I mean, at the end of the day, I'm not going to be sad about having a little extra fat on my sea monster action movie. You don't get
Yeah,
many of those, so
I
this one's
feel like it moves pretty good. Like I understand there are probably some scenes that could have cut down a little bit, but the movie is constantly kind of like keeps you on your toes for the most
yeah,
part. Which that Steven Summers, he's known for that kind of breakneck speed, like throughout all his movies. Like Van Helsing is just set piece after set piece after set piece, and you feel like he kind of indulged himself to a much greater degree later in his career with like Rise of Cobra, whereas this
yeah.
one he had to be a little bit more held back, probably because of budget restraints and stuff like that.
Especially if he was sitting there telling the studio, like, next up, Kong. They're like, all
Yeah,
right, buddy. All
calm
right, we're
down.
gonna give you some notes if you're gonna use that property.
Hmm.
Yeah, no, I dug it. I thought it was a blast. I'm kind of surprised I made it this long without watching this movie because it seems so in my wheelhouse, and also just not really having any familiarity with it. Like I don't know how I went so long with like missing it. This felt to me so much like something you catch on the Sci-Fi Channel at like
Or
10 o'clock.
HBO, like on a weekend, like when you're. For me, it was like, oh, this is on HBO. I'm gonna watch this 10 times. As a kid,
Yeah,
I was a kid when I saw this. If you watch this as a kid, I think you're just gonna have an absolute blast. Violence, gore, like you're just gonna have a blast with the whole thing.
that's true. Yeah, not overly complicated, not super dense in the plot. It's like people on a ship. There's monsters. That's all. Um, which I guess for some, like that, maybe to some that leaves something to be desired. Obviously this was not a critical sensation by any stretch of the imagination when it came out, which is not a surprise, but doesn't need to be. Doesn't need to
Hmm.
deliver on that front. I think, didn't it make Roger Ebert's like most hated movies of all
I
time?
think so. Yeah, which I totally understand.
I don't know, man. I feel like
It's a little
there's so
harsh.
much more to hate
Yeah,
in the world of film
if you're
for this
buying
to
a
land.
ticket, I feel like you got your money's worth. If you knew what you're going into when you went into this, I think you
Yeah.
got your money's worth.
Yeah. I think it's a good fun monster movie, and good kills, and it really does. I mean, they shot a lot of this on an actual set, like we said, a lot of practical effects, a lot of good shots, and I love, you mentioned the Thing earlier. There's like a great, I don't know if it's an intentional Thing homage, but it totally reminds me of when like the monsters coming up across like the ground, and like the
Hmm.
gratings popping up as it
Yes,
moves, and the
classic.
water shooting up. Totally reminded me of the ending of the Thing.
Hmm.
Um, a lot of just cool, fun little shots like that. Just creative ways to play with the space, with the concept, and without showing too much of the monster, because even once they reveal it, they're pretty selective about how it shows up, which I think is smart and to its benefit.
Totally.
Yeah, no, I would definitely say I liked it. I would recommend this in confidence and say it's a underappreciated late '90s cheesy gem.
Thank you. Which Demon Knight also is that for me. So I love bringing these underrated, underappreciated '90s gems to the show because I want them to find the audience because I think they deserve it.
Yeah, that's true. That is kind of the through line of the films you brought to the
Hmm.
show so far.
Yeah.
Same with Demon Knight. I hadn't seen it before, and once I had, I was like, "How the fuck have I never watched this movie? Like, how has this
Right?
never landed on my radar before?"
Listen to me, Mike Flanagan. We know our stuff.
Yeah. This you could totally do. I mean, not that anybody would need to remake Deep Rising proper, like that. I don't think there's any invested a value in the property per se, but like you could totally do another movie like this. Yeah, like did you see that one last year? I think what was it, Underwater with Kristen Stewart?
Yeah, I really liked Underwater. I feel like 15 years from now, if I come on our podcast like this, I'm gonna bring Underwater. I'm gonna be like, Underwater is a much underappreciated, really cool horror film with like a monster kind of underlying. So yeah, like that's right up my alley.
Yeah, 100%.
It's really well directed and produced too. I thought Underwater looked amazing.
Right, and it was like one of the last ones that dropped before movies just didn't exist for a year or so too. So, yeah, no, I think maybe a lot of people just naturally missed it through that. Yeah, I'd love to see more stories like this, more creepy underwater horror, even though it's
I agree.
probably fucking impossible to make and difficult. But no, this movie was a blast. I'm glad you brought it to the show this week. It's great to have you back on and talk about something that I may have never seen otherwise. So appreciate you coming on, brother. It's been fun.
I can't wait to come on again. I'm already racking my brain for the next one. Have you ever seen Critters?
Oh, now Critters, I know, but I haven't watched it in a long time. I haven't watched it in a very long time, so I'd be up to do it again.
Have you ever seen Munchies?
Munchies. I don't think. No, I can't.
It's a Roger Corman horror film from the 80s, and in the same kind of realm of Gremlins and Critters.
Yeah.
That is a fun, bad movie.
All right.
So I'm not saying that's what I'm going to pick, but that's where I'm headed. We'll
put it on the list. I don't think we'll have to worry too intensely about somebody else picking Munchies.
No.
In the meantime, I think that one will sit comfortably on the shelf.
I'm giving you access to my brain of movies that people have never heard of, like, and stuff that I love because I'm older than probably most of the people watching this. So I'm bringing that knowledge with me.
Well, to your point earlier, it's great to talk just, about movies in depth and with people who have the same interests and passions. And I don't know how many people out there are talking about Deep Rising in detail. So I'm glad we could do that this week. And it's been fun. Thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, thank you. And again, we'll have to have you on our new podcast.
I love it.
Film Review Weekly. Me, Taylor Robinson, Jacob London, reviewing the movies every week. Subscribe. It's on Spotify and iTunes. Follow me on Twitter at JTE Movie Thinks. You can see the link for the podcast there. And yeah, we're going to have people like you and a lot of our friends on the show just to talk movies. I'm excited. I don't know. I'll definitely keep you in mind for something horror-esque. Something next, maybe, Halloween's too far away. We'll figure something out before then.
Yeah, anytime you want to talk about something spooky, I'm in. Absolutely. And we'll throw the links to the show in the description too, so people can find that real easily.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks everybody for watching and listening this week, whether it was live or after the fact. We appreciate you. Be sure to come back next Thursday, 8:30 rather. We're going live with Adam Collins, of course. Those movie trivia Schmodown fans, the Coyote well. He's coming on to talk about Werner Herzog's Nosferatu, the Vampire. I'm sure we'll be talking about a lot of different variations of Nosferatu. So feel free to boot up that silent film classic too while you're at it. Nosferatu the Vampire. That's on Peacock and Tubi. Tubi's for free. You can watch it for free right now. So go check it out.
Go watch Deep Rising. Tubi.
Right. And come back next week. Hang out with us and we'll talk vampires. JT, once again, thanks for coming on, my man. Great to have you.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Stay spooky, my friends. We'll see you next week. Later.